Hello and welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll let you go through the magic portal. Happy April. For those teachers that are joining us, thank you for all that you are doing in the world as we work through the school year. I know everyone's are getting kiddos are getting a little bit more energy. Seems to come along with the end of the year, no matter what your weather actually is. Oh, I see some familiar names in the participants. Lovely to see old friends and new. Is that everybody from the waiting room? I think it is. Excellent. Well, we will start on time and make good use of your afternoon to get you up to speed on this new piece that we're doing here. So, welcome everyone. For those of you who I haven't met, my name is Meredith Portsmore. I have a slide for that, don't I? I am the director here at Tufts Center for Engineering Education and Outreach, and a research professor as well. I know I've seen some of you in all kinds of different contexts, and great to have you here. The instructor for this course, who many of you also probably know, is the lovely Alyssa Milto. She's not with us today, but she is the architect behind this microcredential, as well as, of course, our resident guru on novel engineering. And so, depending on whether you decide to continue with us in a microcredential, you'll get to spend more time with her. So what I want to talk about today, for those, maybe you've come because you know about novel engineering, but for those who haven't, we'll talk a little bit about what it is. We'll talk a little bit about what a microcredential is. This is our first one, so we're excited to think about what that looks like, and hopefully that gives folks lots of flexibility with how they want to learn. Talk about how it is, and then what next steps are involved. You all should have access to the Q&A button. If you have a question, feel free to put it in during the talk. I'll probably get to them at the end, but always happy to have your questions. And there. So just to remind folks who we are here at Tufts, the Center for Engineering Education and Outreach is almost 30 years old, 30 years old this year. And it is outside of Boston, up here in Massachusetts, where there are oh so many colleges. And we are an interdisciplinary center. We have folks from all different backgrounds here: engineering, computer science, child development, education. And we want to create the next generation of problem solvers. So from kindergarten through college, by giving them innovative, research-based engineering experiences. We know that by doing hands-on creative work, we can support children in learning disciplinary content and becoming innovators and taking on those next problems. And we do that across all kinds of different spaces here. Some of you may know us from the papers and research we put into the world through our educational research. Some of you may know us through our engineering research, the amazing tools and work we've done with Lego Education. Or maybe we've been in your classroom through one of our outreach pieces, right? We have things that are in the local community as well as our online programs and courses. So all those pieces. We have very, very specific beliefs and philosophies here at the CEO. We know that kids are amazing. Kids are budding engineers. They bring rich and productive ideas to the classroom, and we think of it as our job to figure out how to tap into that. Right? We know that the narrative of what children can't do or deficit models are not really productive. And likewise, we know that the absolute key people in creating this next generation of problem solvers are all of you, the amazing educators who are doing this work. We talk a lot about teachers as dynamic professionals. The other analogy you'll hear us use a lot is teachers are to learning as doctors are to medicine. You are the ones who know what needs to happen in a classroom and how to interact with all of your different students in the best ways. And that's the other thing that we work really hard on here at CEO is figuring out how do we create resources and solutions that help teachers do what they do best in terms of interacting with students. Novel engineering is one of those things that actually came out of conversations with teachers and talking with teachers and spending time in schools where we were trying to say, hey, what does it look like, in a classroom where time is precious and we're trying to meet learning goals in English language arts. We're trying to think about engineering. This is a busy space. And so novel engineering started with a grant from the National Science Foundation. And those resources let us create this approach, work with teachers, test things in classrooms, get lots of feedback, have lots of teachers as co-designers as part of this project, and then begin rolling it out in the world. And so it is over 16 years old now. It's kind of technology resistant in that there's a lot of different ways you can do it, but it's still a really powerful approach. And there's all kinds of resources for it. The book, which some of you may have seen, as well as this. And the core thing to really understand about novel engineering, it's an approach to using classroom literature. So starting with the books, the readings that you already are doing, right? So it's not a whole gigantic binder you're going to plop in, but it's an approach to using the texts that you already need to use, right? Because we know that those are required in many places, or that you might not have much flexibility about what kind of novels or books or short stories are being read, and using those as a context for engineering design challenges where students engineer solutions to help the characters. So our characters become our clients, right? Much like real professional engineers um, work with clients to design for them, to engineer solutions for them. We can't always bring real clients into pre-college classrooms, though we would love to. And it is a great project. But we can bring in books. So books provide characters who have needs and attitudes and abilities, right? So it's things that we need to think about and consider. They have complex and rich problems. If you look across the stories on top here, you might be like, oh yeah, Charlotte had a few issues. Even those ducklings trying to get across the Charles River had some problems. And they're in context, they're in situations with resources and constraints where different designs, different engineered solutions may or may not make sense. So all of those things, when we bring them to bear in the classroom, means that kids are considering these really, really rich problems and they are digging in. And so what we saw as we were doing this research and developing this project is really kind of these bi-directional benefits of putting these two seemingly ELA and engineering. They might not seem like they go together, but they really support one another because the story helps to support really nice engineering thinking because I'm considering the client. I'm thinking about what would really help them. It changes my design if I'm really considering the folks in the story. And likewise, to do that, I need to read the story really carefully. We care about both of these things. In novel engineering, right? It's not just the engineering, it's not just the reading and the themes and the plot points that we care about, right? We care about them both together because we want children to be engaged readers who are understanding the big themes in the book, and we also want them to be thinking about, oh, what could I design and make that could help that character. So we see it going both ways, and right, you can imagine. I'm sure you all have had students, right, where one of those pieces might ground some students more than others, but they'll go back and forth, right? So our readers are all of a sudden using that to bring information to bear on what to make. And sometimes our engineers and making folks who like that part better are going back to the book though to figure out like, well, what should I make? And so that's been a real over the past 16 years, that's been a really exciting contact for us because we see kids doing the kind of thinking and making right that we know they're capable of and that they're excited to do. Because it's interdisciplinary, it's really adaptable, right? We can spend more time doing the ELA, we can spend more time doing the engineering. It works with existing books again, right? That came straight out of work with teachers. Like we can't put in new books. Can I use things I already have? And we can talk, and you'll learn much more about the approach as you do the micro-credential. But there's a lot of space there from really, really short picture books to longer novels, all kinds of space there. And because they're designing for real clients, it has this nice messiness. Well, there's trade-offs, there's constraints and criteria. So we really get that opportunity for problem solving, opportunity for teamwork, and a lot of different ways for folks to participate. There we go. We get to the next one. So, to do this approach, we've done PD for years and years and years with teachers, lots of in-person PD at different sites, some even online at different points. But we're really trying to think of ways in which we can make it more accessible and more readily available for folks as they need it. And so Tufts has implemented microcredentials. And we are going to tell you today about two kind of versions of the microcredential that you can think about. They really are centered on preparing you to be able to do novel engineering in your space with your students. So, what is the approach? Really understanding how we're talking and thinking about engineering design and its role in the classroom. I know from the list of folks here, some of you have been doing that quite a bit. But thinking about what does it look like in this literacy contract? How do we get that client-centered piece to happen? Looking at sample projects and then trying it yourself. So microcredential level one is our introduction. It's our shortest one. It's kind of a base to get you started, kind of your taster. So it won't prepare you to do everything in the novel engineering space, but it's a way to get started. We then have a next level, a more intensive microcredential. They call them level three. Don't ask me what happened to level two. This is just microcredential speak. And here, right, this is real. This one is more hours, right? And so it's helping you to really absorb the entire approach. So you are able to think about what are the skill building activities, right? When we talk about skill builders, right, your students use materials. What kind of activities might you have them do to help them get into using whatever materials you choose, whether that's cardboard and tape or popsicle sticks and glue, thinking about, those pieces that go around engineering. What are the connections, right? So the microcredential level three really digs into the connection between novel engineering and writing, reading, oral communication, all those pieces, right, that you're usually focusing on ELA unit. What does that look like when you couple it with the engineering piece? That second level, our level three microcredential also talks about assessment, right? I know, right? We know we all have to dig in there and really helping you to plan and implement. So in that level one microcredential, that taster, you're gonna see some examples of what it looks like. Level three is really helping you to plan something for your specific setting. So it has scaffolds and activities that help you to say, okay, well, here's a book that I use, or here's a short story, or an excerpt from an anthology that I use, and how can I turn that into a novel engineering approach with more support and scaffolding. So if we look at some of the things that are happening there, right, we're definitely looking to align with help you understand all the pieces that go into it as we do that. So logistics, planning, implementation, how does it align with your current goals, with your current constraints? Developing partner and group pairings, incorporating students' interest. So really trying to help you do those pieces. The thing about novel engineering, right, which I keep emphasizing, right, is it's not a big curriculum binder. It is an approach. So we have lots of tools to say, what book did you choose? How are you going to customize your instruction for, the amount of time you have left? How are we differentiating instruction for different learners? Alyssa Milto, who, again, many of you know, right, comes from special education. And so there's great thought in novel engineering about universal design for learning and the ways in which we can make this accessible for all learners. So this is another great schematic of, if you're looking at the two levels of microcredential. We're expecting that folks will probably do one and then hopefully be really excited and then do the level one and then do the level three. So level one, you'll implement one of two books, right? So you'll go through one of two scaffolded activities. We have Snowy Day for our folks that are in the elementary space, and then by Ezra Jack Keith, and then we have Linda Sue Park's Long Walk to Water that are folks who are in, upper elementary, middle. We've used that book all the way up through early high school, work through. So in level one, you work through one of those, you get a taste, and you're able to see what it looks like. Level three, they're both asynchronous, but level three also has office hours. So level one is pretty much self-guided. You can do it independently on your own time, in your own way. Level three is also still has all those affordances, right? These aren't courses in that traditional sense. There's modules, there's videos, and you'll be able to go through those at your own pace. But it also offers office hours. So Alyssa and probably myself at a few points will be holding office hours so you can ask questions and really get specific help and feedback. We wanted to have that asynchronous feel, right? Which lets you be like, it's a busy week. I need to put this off till next week, but also have that support that you get from a typical, a more traditional course. Level three also includes activities and strategies for doing things, right? And then, right, really doing that custom experience that makes sure that you walk away with something that you can use in your setting. And in doing so, right, you're obviously also then prepared to be like, oh, I know what this would look like, if I wanted to do two novel engineering projects in a year or three. We spend a lot of time, especially across the level three module, thinking about how do we help students connect, whether that's activity framing and context. Do students understand? Do you need to provide different information? How do we get that engineering content in there? What might we need to do to support students? We are obviously very passionate about social emotional learning. Are students working effectively with each other? Are they giving each other feedback? Engineering is inherently, we found at least, and I know many of you probably have as well, it's really emotional, right? When you make something and it doesn't work, you get frustrated. And that's just a normal and natural thing we know happens in awesome engineering classes. But how do we help students move through that, right? How do we acknowledge their frustration, support them in persisting and moving forward? And then also, how do we support students' executive function, right? Engineering tasks, right, really employ that executive function of coming up with ideas, moving forward. And we know some students, right, need more support and more scaffolding with those executive function activities. And how can we do that for different ages, with different books, with different engineering activities? Across all of this work, of course, is our deep commitment to inclusive and connective classrooms. We think, right, of students as having valuable experiences and assets, and how do we meet them where they are? We might need different supports for multilingual learners, different supports for students who are struggling with executive functions or other neurodiversities. We really want to widen access to engineering and equitable participation in the classroom. So throughout the novel engineering experiences, thinking about what does that look like in your space and helping you use tools you may already use, as well as, what we've seen, right, is of course, if you're here, you're an amazing educator who cares deeply about your students, but maybe you haven't thought about, okay, well, this is what I do with my students in my traditional or typical instruction. What does it look like when I'm doing this kind of hands-on piece here? So there are all those pieces that come into play. And obviously, to do that, we are deeply embedded with the Universal Design for Learning framework to think about, okay, how can we think about doing that in this? How can we have a note catcher? What is a visual scaffold we might have on somebody's desk while they're working through a novel engineering problem? We also think about, what are those mini things we can do to establish those norms in the classroom? So one that often happens in novel engineering is, before we get into the meat of connecting a book and literacy, what if we launch with something um, that's a little simpler for students, like creating a pencil holder out of recyclables? Because we're still getting into that engineering mindset of saying, okay, well, it has to meet some requirements and criteria. It has to use materials we've had. Maybe this is the first time I'm having some group work happen around hands-on things in my classroom, so I want to see what those partners look like. Um, and we're going to do it. And right, maybe it's the first time students are getting access to tape and glue, right? We're never ever or maybe we're always surprised. The tape never stops being amazing and fascinating, no matter how much students have access to it. And so, right, getting some of those wiggles out of doing a hands-on project with kind of a warm-up project like pencil holder. And then sometimes, and if we're using recyclables or other craft materials, all right, they can take it home and have something to show off. Here's some examples from there. One of the great things about this, as well as many of the novel engineering activities, right, is these are really open-ended engineering activities that give students space to not only think about function, but also form, right? What do they look like? Would it make sense? Is this something my character would like? Um, One book that we've done many times is Ezra Jack Keats's Peter's Chair, right? Where the little brother has very definite opinions about what color his things should be as a new baby sister comes into the house. And that's an important detail in the story, right? And it's a great detail to think about in the design. And it helps tell those thematic pieces that are really, really important. We think a lot about the materials and talk through that, right? We know the logistics matter, right? That you are also thinking about, okay, I'm going to bring all this stuff into my classroom. How does it work? What are the best materials used? What do I really need? The great news about novel engineering is it's very, very affordable. You can do it with some tape and some glue and lots of recyclables. And then if you happen to have access to other materials, whether building materials or wood or other pieces, I know some of you run maker spaces, you can definitely think about that. And throughout the level three, we talk about what are the trade-offs there, right? If you say happen to have robotics kits in your classroom, what kind of things does that make possible that are exciting? And what are also the trade-offs? If you have a robotics kit, every problem in the book might seem to the students that it needs a robotic solution. When it may not. We think about, all of those details as we do this in terms of, how do we support students making decisions about materials? We know that students are learners, right? They're learning how to plan. So while we can ask them to have some initial ideas, right? Even if they've used cardboard and popsicle sticks before, they don't always know exactly how to assemble them. So they're learning how to iterate, how to try out those materials, but you also need to have a reasonable classroom that you can turn around for the next class period or not spend, 45 minutes cleaning up at the end of the day. So how can we do those things in reasonable ways within school? We talk a lot about ways in which we can do formative assessment with students, right? By having them do drawings or get some of their initial ideas out, right? Because we think of course, right, in our analogy of teachers are to learning as doctors are to medicine, right? Sometimes we need some diagnosis tools. What kind of ideas do you have? What are you thinking about? How is this group working together? What did you notice in the story that you think you're going to build for? And so we definitely have strategies to share there in terms of using drawing as a formative assessment tool, and ways that you can get to that to help smooth over those parts that you need to figure out. As well as sharing some of the resources, some of which we developed, some of which we actually have from some of our pilot teachers of summative assessments. Okay, well, this is something that has to be graded in my class. What does that look like? Um, And how do I encompass all the things that are happening here from not only right this thing we don't want to just grade right did the device work or not that you engineered, but how did it connect to the character? Did it, how would you explain how the character used it and use those pieces as makes sense for your classroom to support students grading and assessment? So lots of great resources there to share with you in level three. So yeah, so that's a bit about how the micro-credential is configured. So just to reiterate, we have level one, that's your taster, get a taste, come try a novel engineering activity with us, get the background. Um, we've calibrated to be about a 7, 8 hour commitment to do that at $100. So hopefully that's something that is a great starting place. The level three, which is right, much more comprehensive, right, prepares you. I would say is more akin to our traditional PD, right? Like when we have a multi-day PD to do novel engineering. So it's a 20 to 25 hour commitment. It has virtual office hours available, and it is at the $500 price point. There is a discount. This is the first time we're doing this, so if you have any trouble with this, you'll let us know because this is administered by Tufts centrally. So we're just learning about it. There's a discount, right? If you do both of them, then it goes to $450. Um, and I would tell you more about that, but we have since we have just rolling that out, that's all the details I have. Um, Both of the levels do require that you have the novel engineering book to support there, but you can register for either of them at go.tufts.edu/microcredentials. We also have this cool QR code that you can scan. I'm really bad at QR codes, so I'll let you do there. But if you prefer to do it from your phone there, and of course, in the chat are all the links as well. We're really excited about novel engineering and micro-credentials, so we hope to see some of you register for it. Lynn, our amazing communications director there, just put the link for novel in the chat if you want to see more examples of novel engineering. I'm assuming if you came today, you probably know a bit about it. I didn't want to belabor it too much, but always happy to answer questions or whatnot. Up on the novel engineering website is the huge suite of books that we've tried it with. Novel engineering works really well when students can connect to the characters and the problems. So we've seen it work with a huge range of books. You saw a few in the beginning presentation, but up there on the website or even more. I'll say my favorite thing, which is, it doesn't work super well in magical contexts. Harry Potter does not need novel engineering. He has a magic wand, but it's really, yeah, right. So in worlds that aren't grounded in reality, it doesn't make as much sense. But you'll see up there just tons of books from the Mixed Up File, Mrs. Baisley Frankwell, Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing, Shiloh. Lots and lots of stories, lots and lots of books, right? Especially where the main characters, the protagonists, are really close in age to your students or your readers. So we see them, developing empathy and really trying to connect there. Yeah, so I will stop there. If folks have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A, and I'll be happy to answer anything we have. Or you can always email us or Slack, message us on social media. We love, love, love for those of you who I know already do some work in this space. Uh, you can always tag us. We love seeing pictures of what your students make. I always say, up there with babies and puppies and adorable animals. I always love seeing pictures of what your students are making, whether it's novel engineering or any other kind of engineering. You'll always see us retweeting, reposting, or resharing those out. So definitely keep us posted on your adventures. Excellent. Well, thank you all. Thank you all so much for coming today. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you there. Well, Alex says if you hope, maybe you can schedule on a weekend. I know. Yeah. Thank you, Alex, for the feedback. I know our last conference was not on a weekend. We had a space issue. Um, and yeah, I'm not sure if we can share the slides, but I will definitely look into it and see what we can post on the conference website. Well, thanks all for coming.